Welcome to the Think Fitness Life podcast, where we bring the mind, body, and gym together so you can improve your health, increase performance, and live your best life. For more information, visit thinkfitnesslife.com. Here are your hosts, Matt Gluckman and Eric Menchie.
Welcome back to the Think Fitness Life show, Mindset, Exercise, Nutrition, with your hosts Matt, Eric, and Justin. We have a special guest with us today. He is a Rhode Island native, got his undergrad in applied exercise science from Springfield, went on to get his master's in human movement science from BU, Boston University, for those who don't know that. He's worked in strength and conditioning departments from Harvard to Colgate to University of Miami, before he went on to win the 2006 NCAA National Championships for men's and women's hockey at the University of Wisconsin as the primary strength and conditioning coach. Currently, he's in his 15th season as the San Jose Sharks strength and conditioning coordinator, and he is also the director of performance for Tactical Fit Pros, which is a training platform geared at enhancing special forces and military personnel's physical capabilities. Welcome on, Mike Potenza.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. It's an honor. Seriously.
I mean, like a lot after you read it.
It probably doesn't feel like a lot. Every day you wake up, you probably feel like you got more to do, I'm sure. That's like the trainer's mindset.
The time has flown by, but I will say, every single one of those experiences and the ones in between that I did not list have been a tremendous blessing and a help, to say the least, in my career. None of those experiences, every one of those experiences has helped me get to where I am, and been lucky enough to be here for so long. So,
yeah, it just kind of shape, right? Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm curious to where it all began. Was it young little Mike playing street hockey in the drive yard, or?
Yeah. No. Well, I did. Youth hockey was my first sport growing up, and just fell in love with it. Our family was big hockey fans. Obviously, the Bruins were our team, but much like a lot of kids, I played a bunch of sports growing up, and I just kind of gravitated. Hockey is an expensive sport, especially for a blue collar family, right? So things got expensive as I entered my early teens for hockey, and I just gravitated to different sports that were more cost effective for my family, but kept skating and ended up playing soccer in college at Springfield.
Nice.
Which was a tremendous experience from the guys I played with and what we were able to do and take a program that wasn't successful and be successful. So that was tremendous. That was fun. And then when I went to BU, it was like hockey was the main sport, right? So I kind of turned up my recreational skating a little bit more, and just so I could familiarize myself with the rehabilitation world of hockey and having the ability to kind of just plan reconditioning programs on the ice. It's a different world than if you're doing any field-based sport or court-based sport kind of rehabilitation program. And at the time, I was working for Mike Boyle part-time, and so he was tasking me with some of the pro hockey guys' rehab, and understood it was going to be a facet if I ever kept climbing the ladder, or if I went to work in college hockey, which I did in Wisconsin. Yeah. And, you have to have a good grasp on what the reconditioning return to play is like. So right. And that's become a very big portion of my job right now, surprisingly enough. I would have never guessed it really at the start of my career. So,
like, not how hard the player can hit, but how hard they can get hit and bounce back, right?
How fast they are, yeah.
Okay, yeah, how fast they are on the ice. And I'm curious though, talking a lot about injury rehabilitation, is a lot of shoulders, a lot of wrists, a lot of ankles. What's the common hockey injuries?
The pelvis gets torn to shreds in many different ways, whether it be hip flexor, groin, sports hernia, some sort of pelvic floor issue. That goes along with any overuse injury, any mechanical dysfunction that you have going in to training or into the sport. So you got to really look at what assessment tools are you using to look at the orientation of their posture and things like that. That's really helpful because you don't want to just add horsepower to an engine or a car with bad alignment, right?
Right.
Have a recipe for success anyway. So, yeah, you have to consider all those factors when you're building the program and kind of with who you're dealing with. Maybe it's a rookie, maybe it's a veteran guy of 15, 20 years,
Mm-hmm. So what's some of your go-to assessments that you would perform? Like, do you use the FMS? You use
Yeah.
Great Cook's FMS?
I early on I did, it was my first exposure to some sort of mechanical assessment, movement assessment. I was fortunate enough to have Kevin Neild as my assistant for a few years. I think you guys know his name really well in the performance
Strength
space, not
conditioning
only in
field.
hockey but the performance space. And him and I really kind of drilled down on a bunch of different. We just kind of took a lot of ideas from PRI. We took it from the FMS. We took it from simple range of motion exercises with goniometers. And we kind of put together our own kind of recipe. And then that's exactly what it was. It was assessing total hip arc in a seated position. It was measuring ankle mobility. We pulled in the Y balance test because that very much looks like skating and then actually requires a lot of proper mechanics with it, whether you be in kind of sagittal plane or transverse plane, or the frontal plane. So we pulled all those in and kind of create this movement profile. And based on that, we set our corrective exercises. We set our mobility training for guys and guys who are really train wreck, if you will, then they have to do more of it, because it really does manifest itself in the way they skate. So
Yeah.
goalies included. So
Do you work a lot with their nutrition and the recovery as well, or at least informing them on it?
yeah, very much so. And unfortunately, we didn't have a full-time nutritionist when I came onto the team. But in the last few years, we were able to get a part-time certified nutrition resource, certified dietitian. So she's been tremendous. We actually she's moved on to the New York Rangers, so we actually are looking for another resource here going into the off season. But it's vital. You can't talk about gaining adaptations in performance and reaching your training goals if you can't talk about the right nutrition. And I think any athlete, probably more so at the NHL level, or at the pro level, the expenditure is so high based on what they're doing for training, based on the travel, based on poor sleep, based on circadian rhythms, from when the game is played. So we really have to focus on that area for every guy. I've taken on the kind of role of setting the training table menus with our caterer, setting the menus on the plane for our flights, and getting our
Nice.
hockey operations staff to order the pregame meals and the foods we have on the road. So and then the cherry on top is that I got to deal with supplements too. So it's a big role that I do enjoy, but at the same time, you definitely need a nutritionist on board for those cases where they get to be guys got to lose a certain percentage of body fat or get their weight down, or if they're having some GI distress and some food inversions. What's the blood work look like? Which it's very big on our team, and we're hoping to get back to our regular schedule of analyzing blood work post COVID, post the COVID return season. And yeah, it's a vast topic. You can get down that rabbit's hole and get lost down there.
Yeah, no, I'd imagine that's probably one of the most difficult areas is just really compliancy of all the nutrition advice and the sleep advice and the avoiding alcohol advice, because I would imagine that professional athlete, after they've just performed in their game, just wants to go party and drink anyway and celebrate. So
yeah, it's a different, I would say, like 10 years ago. Yeah, like at least with the culture, I think, in the league right now. I mean, it's different now. It's a very young group, and especially this year, you couldn't go out, and
right.
if you're in. But honestly, I feel kind of in the outside looking in with the social side of what the players do. I think they pick their spots a lot better as opposed to 10 years ago, where it was like, yeah, we're getting into a city and we're gonna go somewhere, So that's reassuring. That was an aha moment for me coming from college, working in the college space mostly was the age of the guys and what they do usually. But again, it has changed, and I tell you what, it was nutrition. I always knew it was really important, but I guess my thought process early on in the NHL and through college was more of a foundational nutrition thought process. It was
Hmm.
protein, it was, proper rehydration, it was creatine, when you could. But
Hmm.
as I said about the rabbit's hole, it's such a vast area, and you can really impact a lot of change if you get your nutritional process and system correct at this level, because guys are burning the candle at both ends, and they need that.
100%.
You need to go beyond the foundational products that of protein rehydration and kind of creatine, so we
And to your point, just kind of how it evolved. I remember even 5 years ago, I feel like everyone was just like, a calorie is a calorie is a calorie.
yeah,
And now, we don't think that way at all. It's all
right,
about, macronutrients, micronutrients, and just having the proper amount of resources so that your body can rebuild and repair.
totally. I mean, like I'll give you a couple examples. Like I think, and maybe you guys would agree, but like 10 years ago, I think we were just started to talk about vitamin D. Vitamin D.
Yeah.
Well, or maybe it was omegas. So it kind of went to this wave of omegas were critical, and they are. And then vitamin D came in, and now I would say, like, magnesium is the new vitamin D in a way. Whereas it's massively impactful. Like if you're not getting your athletes to take extra magnesium, and because I'm assuming they're all going to be working hard and practicing hard and training all year round, like, then you're missing the boat if you're not getting
Mhm.
that for sleep, and then just getting it for regular increase of the pool of magnesium you have in your body. If we
And
have,
that's where the blood tests come in, because you can monitor that stuff throughout the season, right?
correct, yeah, and another thing too, when one of probably the biggest things I learned through our blood work analysis is that testosterone levels of our players were shot, vitamin D
Mm,
levels were shot, and then
yeah.
to a man, we had probably 5 trace minerals that were deficient on everybody, and it wasn't this. It was the same group of 5, but the combination per player was a little bit different. Somebody had boron, selenium, and copper. Somebody had copper, magnesium, and boron. But it was always these things came up, and fortunately enough, I've became really friendly with Jim Laval. He's done a tremendous amount of education for our strength coach in the National Hockey, strength coaches of the National Hockey League group, and
Hmm.
I asked him, I said, Jim, why am I seeing all these different trace minerals? He's like, well, you guys are always anaerobic. The sport is built on anaerobic metabolism, technically, or at least that's what gets used a lot. And
Hmm.
when you're living in acid all the time, you're not replacing it. Your body's, as a process of homeostasis, your body's going to go and look for those trace minerals. And where do you find it? It's in bone, so it will deplete those areas and
Lower your
we
bone
create some
density.
sort of osteoporotic environment, so to speak. Not totally down that hallway of osteoporosis, but
But head in that direction,
correct.
right?
Yeah, it's gonna if when you live in acid, it's going to leach out from bone that because it needs those minerals. And I was like, it's kind of one of those aha moments. Like I go to conferences quite a bit, I used to before COVID, and
Right.
when you're like,
Online conferences.
yeah, yeah, or even so, you're right. Like I'll leave a virtual talk or a conference, and I'm like, man, I'm an idiot. Why didn't I? That makes so much sense, and it's simple, And but Jim's been a tremendous resource for that, and I will say, like, we do provide vitamins that are all everything is NSF tested in our league, or has to be. But I provide
Mhm.
a specific combination of vitamins for our guys, and more so for the guys who are deficient in more different areas. So,
Yeah, that's fascinating, and I'm curious as to the timing of these blood tests. Or do you guys make sure they're pretty consistent with trying to control all the outside variables in terms of, or is it like post workout? Is it on an off day?
it will be on a day that, well, we shoot for 3. So
Okay.
beginning of the year at training camp, and then we go for middle of the season, then we go prior to playoffs, right? And
Okay.
if we could get in more, great. We haven't gotten in more than 4 because of the schedule. The schedule's tough as it relates to your question. So we look to have it on a practice day in the morning while they're fasted, but the practice day cannot be prior to that. It can't be a game day, right?
Okay.
Still recovering, and their sleep is shot the night after a game. So we're trying to get a practice day that's not conflicted with a game, and it
And then,
lines up. It kind of it does line. It has lined up successfully, I would say, over the years.
mhm. And I'm curious, what do you think? a level of some of the, at least maybe the testosterone being truncated? Do you think there's a level to which there is inorganic compounds being leached in from kind of our agricultural
Yeah.
process?
It very much can be. I mean, we haven't done in our panels, we haven't really looked at environmental toxicity and things like that. I know Jim speaks a lot about that impact on our military. Um,
Yeah.
and what, because they're constantly training, and when you're constantly training with lead exposure in terms of ammunition, then you really got to kind of look at like what's their toxicity levels, right? What's their heavy metal count in their blood and things like that. We have not looked at those types of things, at least with this population,
Mhm.
but I'm sure, yeah, there's very much can be some sort of effect on that.
I guess what I was kind of getting at was in terms of nutrition, how important or how much of a priority is it to say you guys got to make sure you're getting organic, no hormone, no antibiotic type of meat as well?
Yeah,
Is that it?
I make it a priority to source our meat, and if we have any dairy, it would be organic. It would be really good sources locally from vendors that our caterer would buy from, and especially on the road. We always make that a priority, and then
That's awesome.
yeah, it's a priority, and I think follow through and follow up and auditing that process is different and can take some time. And that's why that's where the nutritionist should really come in for an organization or a team to really like, okay, are we really getting, grass fed beef on our training table on the road, or is our caterer
Mhm.
in Toronto or Minnesota actually giving us what we're ordering? So that's important. Like that you do have to have follow up for that. But at least our
Yeah.
process is to get the right things at the table, bring the right ingredients in, if you will.
Right. Yeah, because the body's constantly rebuilding itself, so you want to make sure you're giving it the best materials possible to rebuild.
Absolutely. Yep. You want
Um,
you want the right fuel on the fire, right?
that's right. Switching gears here a little bit, back to some of the programming stuff. What percentage? I know you're talking a lot about the specific assessments for your hockey players, but what percentage of your in-gym training is specific to hockey players only?
We get into some sports specificity, if you will, like kind of an SPP type program in the latter part of the summer in preparation for the season. We have a good group that comes back probably with 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks of preparation time before the preseason begins, which is a good thing. It's good to build your culture on, and getting
Hmm.
everybody back and working together.
Yeah.
In season, I use it sparingly, to be honest with you.
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't think our guys need any more lateral plyometrics in season because they're skating and they're sprinting on the ice and using that plane of movement. So we don't really generally use that too much.
So
And
you're just sticking with, squatting,
yeah,
benching,
sure.
deadlifting, cleaning.
Yep. Or and that's very right. And then we'll make variations where guys need to. If somebody can't load their axial spine, we'll pitch sharp them, or we'll do some sort of variation that takes the
Safety
spine out of
bar
the way.
or
If we have wrist and hand injuries, then we have to make accommodations for that. We'll K box if we need to, So it's whatever it's what a guy is comfortable doing and also structurally ready to do, right?
yeah. And then what about for improving your conditioning? You said you're working on just really speed. Are you working on capacity at all either? Or you're just working on peak performance?
Yeah. Well, in the summer, I mean, if we're working on on sprint work, true alactic work, we want to build that level of power up as high as we can. And then as we progress, as we achieve distances of around 20 meters and measure times and things like that, then we're gonna transition into an alactic capacity, right? So we want to be able to do
Hmm.
it multiple times, and we follow that same rule of thumb with anaerobic metabolism, right? So when that happens, probably the anaerobic is not. We'll focus on that later in the summertime, and the dosing of that isn't very long, because they're going to get enough anaerobic when the coaches start with them in preseason.
Right.
Our job is, if anything, I'll introduce anaerobic type work off the ice, maybe for 2 or 3 weeks, and then transition it onto the ice. So we're doing more anaerobic type work on the ice, right?
And how do you like to measure those improvements?
Week to week, we're measuring recovery times.
Okay.
That's one way we do look at it. We are timing sprint work. I mean, Boyle and Tony Holler has talked quite a bit about that, right? And measuring what matters gets measured in a lot of ways, right? So we do look at sprint times and change of direction times with our 5-10-5 shuttle or anything like that. And then we'll measure those types of things on the ice as well. What we're trying to get into more so is we got a 1080 sprint, so we can really look at kind of that force time curve and sprint, that sprint power out, that force output during sprint. So we're going to dive into that more in this off season. And then with our testing, we're going to look at Wingate. Wingate is a big test for us for obviously power output and relative power output, but also sprint decrement, right? Kevin Neal brought the idea of sprint decrement instead of fatigue index. So when we look at kind of our anaerobic capacity and the recovery from that, we want to make sure that there's no drop off, right? Or there's minimal drop off from the highest power output you can put out and then
to the lowest.
Right.
Just the consistency piece.
Right. And if you have less decrement, for a guy who puts out 1,500 watts on a Wingate at peak and only falls off to 1,000, that's going to be a lot better in terms of anaerobic ability and recovery ability than the guy who puts 1,500 out and then drops down to 7. Right.
Right.
We very much want to look like that. And I think what relates to skating from that test is the power output, Guys can accumulate speed a lot faster if they can put more force into the ice in those first 3 or 4 steps.
Yeah, absolutely. Acceleration speed.
Correct.
What do you typically see from the power that you see from someone on the ground in shoes to skates? Is it like a 70% loss, 70% power output on the ice compared to on the ground?
We really haven't. We've measured drop off with resisted loads. Right. And I can't say that I've looked at, how much power output is dropped off from the bike to the ice. I would say generally our highest power output guys are our faster guys, from Wingate to on ice sprint. The cool thing is that I think now in the last probably 5 to 10 years, there's more research coming out about speed development and what is speed on the ice, and can we even can your hockey player on dry land, your fastest guy is he going to be the fastest guy on the ice? And that's not.
Yeah, that'd be curious. What was what'd you find?
There's a lot of limitations, right? And there's limitations mechanically. You can have a guy who's strong as an ox and fast off the ice in terms of locomotor movement and sprinting, but then once they get on the ice, their posture may change their stride, their foot position may change their stride, and that's
all mechanics and kinesiology are just totally different.
Yeah, exactly. We've seen guys who on a VO2 test, their heart rate gets to a certain level, and then they're bad skaters. And then you add 20 more beats to them because they're inefficient on the ice with skating. So it's interesting in that respect, but. I would say, first you got to look at mechanics, because then the transfer may be delayed because you have poor mechanics on the ice and your stride and your body posture is poor. And then you got to look if they're, we kind of go through this matrix, right? So, hey, if they're fast off the ice, if they're explosive on their jumps off the ice and they look like a good skater, then what's the limiting factor? And it could be the engine at that point. It could be, edge work with turning and things like that. So, we've kind of set up all these, our skating coach has kind of this evaluation that would have to check a box, and we look at that, and then we look at that power outputs off the ice to find out where the best intervention would be.
Because law of specificity, right?
Yeah, exactly. We kind of bucket everybody, right? So when we see groups who are who have limited hip arc, right? So internal and external rotation combined, maybe a asymmetrical difference, or maybe just, bilaterally they suck there, so then we're going to give them we'll give them more prep and mobility work. And the FRC, we'll pull from the FRC quite a bit. We may pull from just some PNF and static stretching type holds for those particular guys. My assistant, Steve Delestro, and prior to him, Kevin too, were really down the PRI rabbit hole. So we're able to kind of look at those exercises that would induce pelvic change and pelvic realignment, so which is cool. And I've only scratched the surface, but those two guys, Steve and Kevin, are really, really, really good at it, which helps me. They're my teachers in that respect for sure. So we'll set correctives through PRI testing as well.
Eric's PRI certified. He loves all that stuff.
Oh yes, okay, yeah. I know he did his PRT. Yeah, he's great. He's awesome to have. He gives me. We're the same age and we're from the same area. Yeah, great. You probably said, "Geez, Mike's coming on. We should add Steve." Yeah, he's the gatekeeper on that for sure. And I think I would say in the last couple of years we've been really trying to target some breathing strategies too. Um, it's become it's one of those aha things. Like I said before, we know how important sleep is now, and it's getting the credit it needs and the credit that it's due. And breathing's the same way. Not only from a recovery and regeneration standpoint, but from a performance standpoint. You
Yeah.
guys would be shocked if you saw some guys on the field, or sorry, on the ice during their shift. They hold their breath, and it's like they
Mm,
don't have a good breathing strategy when they get off
yeah.
the ice for recovery. They just think, I'm going to just huff and puff and I'll get back down eventually. But there is a calming, proper technique to it, as you guys know, that we're trying to give guys in between shifts, or at least discuss it.
And just also sort of a systems biology approach, just to what your central nervous system's doing, in the importance of breathing. And I'm just curious, is that something that you get a lot of eye rolls for when you're trying to coach breathing with your athletes?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I think it's mostly from the older guys,
Right.
um, but it seems like those guys, when they practice it a little bit to calm themselves at night and help them sleep, it helps tremendously.
Yeah.
But hey, we're part salesmen too, right? In our field,
Yeah.
tell people on new effective ways to train that are unorthodox and things like that. So, but when they're effective and they see somewhere along the line, that they're, a certain breathing strategy to get their heart rate down, and that biofeedback tool of seeing their heart rate get into, what we call the blue zone, on the visual of the first beat system. Like they're like, wow, that happened a lot quicker,
Hmm.
than before. I'm like, yeah, well, because you're breathing the right way.
So it helps having tools to really demonstrate this stuff to the athletes
It,
as
it
well.
definitely does. Yeah. When they can
Because
visually see.
winning fixes everything, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or masks a lot of things.
Oh, yeah, exactly, right?
Right.
Covers up a lot of poor performance things. So, speaking on that topic, what are other saying some issues with teaching breathing mechanics? What are other some common issues that you feel like you run into with your athletes, or maybe you just feel like you don't have enough time, or probably you feel like you need to duplicate yourself?
Yeah. I think yeah, you can always duplicate yourself. You never have enough resources, that's for sure. I think the two common things that we're always fighting is, one is the corrective exercise. And I say corrective exercise as it relates to what Steve does with PRI and what we want to implement to get somebody some better posture. And that includes our warm up and our mobility session. Like it's actually really important to me that we warm up and we take some time, because we can address a lot of issues, from mobility to proper locomotor movement to, CNS excitation, and just if we can do that every practice day, I believe over the years we've been able to stay ahead of any nagging injuries and things like that, because we're constantly working on it. We're not leaving the players off on their own to hopefully get warmed up enough so the tissue's ready, so you're mechanically you're ready. We
You're ensuring all that
right,
stuff step
right,
by
yeah.
step. Yeah.
Athletes want to add horsepower to the engine. Athletes are okay with training. But it's doing these corrective exercises and investing time in the not sexy exercises and warming up and things like that, that they're critical. I would tell any young
Yeah.
coach coming into the league or working with a pro team, like, you need to spend time with this. And I know they're not going to want to do it, but it'll save you a lot of headaches in the long run. But you still have guys with our schedule. The second thing that's difficult is, like, you gotta kick them in the ass a little bit sometimes. Like, hey, we got to train today. We're going on the road next week. We're not going to have good training opportunity. I know we just played, but we got to get something in. I know you're tired, but we got to get this in. Here's the long term approach of how many days we can't go without training, and then our qualities start to deteriorate. So those are the two big issues that I'm always facing. And I don't think I think that's just the nature of the beast, right? That's the
Right. Yeah. It's always an uphill battle, right?
right.
60 minutes for your workouts?
No, in the summer, probably like closer to 90, but in season, probably 30.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
about a 10 to 15 minute warm up. If it's done properly, and then workouts are just like 30 minutes. Yeah, they're not. We have a combination of kind of core work, primary exercises, and then a block of like assistive work, and then we move on. The theme of each workout could be general strength, it could be speed, which is more velocity based gym aware type monitoring, and then power, which is more of a contrast, right? So primary exercise paired with a plyometric type exercise. So
And then what's the frequency of that? Like 3 days power, 2 days speed, or?
we'll alternate, right? So I'm a big fan of Isserand's charts of residual training effects, and to just
Yep.
keep an eye on how long you can do something for, or not do something for, before quality deteriorates. So
Right.
we're generally getting in, I would say, in a 7-day period in the middle of the season, we're getting 2 workouts in religiously. Then usually a combination of strength, speed, and then the following week maybe speed, power, strength, power. And then we just keep alternating it in our thought process. If there are guys who need more of one than the other, then we tip the scale that way for them. So that's kind of our little twist on individualization.
And do you do undulated periodization where every week changes the percentage of what weights you guys are moving?
No, it doesn't get that complicated, at this level. Like, we're monitoring.
Complicated. Everything else you just talked about,
At least for that, I guess. But, we when we're tracking things in GymAware, we're able to call upon speeds and velocities at certain loads. So we may go, we'll definitely go back to that and have them hit a target. Every 4th week, we'll look at 3 to 5 RM on trap bar and 3 to 5 RM on bench, but we're also measuring GymAware velocity, so we know where those occur. And sometimes we give them a target zone. So, hey, don't go below 0.3. We'll keep adding weight until you don't go below 0.3.
Okay.
It's safe and controlled.
Yeah, you don't want to make them worse. You don't want to decondition anybody.
Yeah, we don't want to injure. Obviously, have them go heavy on them and not be prepared. And then we're looking at jump scores. We do in-season force plate jumps with counter movement jump and then non-counter movement. So we're looking at any drop-off there. If we do see a drop-off, it's generally because of fatigue, right? And it's generally because of timing, lack of sleep, and young players will fatigue easier. They're not used to an 80-game schedule, playing every other day. Remember, college kids, they play Friday and Saturday. They play, if they're lucky, 35 games a year. And then you get Canadian junior kids and the international junior players, they'll play 60 games in a year, but still not at this intensity. So,
it's like living on the ice.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you use the Whoop to get insight into sleep?
I'm a big fan of Aura Ring. A bunch of the players want Whoop. I really don't. If we can get Aura Rings for everybody, that'd be great. That's a whole nother budget meeting thing, though. But if the players are bought into the Whoop, then great. Something is better than nothing. And
right, because otherwise you're just kind of feeling out with your eyes closed.
Right,
trying to give somebody advice.
My concern comes with the location of tracing the heart rate, and I think if we really want to do a deep dive and be specific, then you have to find the most accurate area. And I think Aura Ring is on that track. But even so, you could go down the first beat rabbit hole and use their bodyguard monitoring system or their quick recovery test when they come in and hook themselves up to the monitor in the system and get a true reading. So
get resting heart rate and heart rate variability and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on the blue light blocking glasses to help people?
Yeah, it's a great way to kind of, in a way, a backdoor to the nervous system where you can shut off any activity that's ongoing in the brain before you
get parasympathetic quicker.
We bought a ton of them for our players, believe it or not. We got UV block. They're great. And you'd be surprised, not just TV, but devices, small devices that are constantly on in their room, hotel rooms, on the road, and looking at. We've encouraged guys to actually, I think Apple made it standard on their devices, but there's blue light drowning function, and it used to be called Flux, FLUX, and it just changed your screen to the amber type color. And we encourage everybody to kind of put that on and download it after a certain time. But the glasses are we've had some amazing responses from guys wearing the glasses, actually. So
I could see the glasses working wonders for your team, and that's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And then we put a lot into sleep. We put a lot of effort in terms of tones where they can listen to and down-regulate themselves, binaural tones. It's a great app on the iPhone. And then any sort of herbal adaptogen type product that'll help them rest and recover. We kind of have our targeted hit list for that. And then magnesium lotion was a Poliquin product. It still is actually, but there's a lot of benefit to just even doing that topical magnesium to help you sleep. Believe it.
It'll help stimulate better blood flow, right?
Yeah, better blood flow, or you're putting nutrients into that area so it can heal, right? Especially if it's any sort of bony area.
I kind of want to switch gears here. I wanted to get a chance to talk about your Tactical Fit Pro stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then when you work with a tier 1 special ops team, and pararescue is kind of what we've been lucky enough to work with, and these are servicemen and women that are fighting medics. They support medically any of our top special forces assets like SEAL Team 6 and all that, but they support them medically and where they have to tactically. So these guys they can swim like Navy SEALs, and they can jump out of airplanes, they can mountaineer, they can do everything. They're badasses to put it simply. I got into working with them because I just had I made a friend here in San Jose, and he was a senior master sergeant and loved to train, and we got introduced to each other, and I brought him to Sharks, showed him our program, the depth of our program, and he's like, man, we need this. And I was like, what do you mean you need this? You guys don't have this? This is
right.
How do some of our best warfighters don't have this unless you're SEAL Team 6 or Delta
on the front lines?
But that was around the time when I met him in 2009, and that was when Exos or API or whatever you want to call it, if you call it one thing, then you know how old the person is, So if you're an API guy, then you've been around that long. But now it's Exos, right? So it's when they get that big military contract, and SOCOM was really starting to put the high quality performance resources into our elite fighters. And so we built this program from the ground up here in San Jose, and then it just spitballed into this massive program that's now a mandatory program in the Air National, and it's been cool. It's difficult to navigate those waters for me personally as a businessman in that area because you're left to government contracting. So my work with them now at the team level is I do have a contract for an active duty team in Italy supplying a physical therapist, but very much still involved in that world with the guys who are in command now, and still talking with them and talking about how policies should be written about how they should train, what resources they should have, So
you kind of write the programs and oversee them.
That was very much what we did in the past. We employed a strength coach on base, a physical therapist, and a massage therapist. And we wrote the program for 2 pararescue teams, the one in Alaska in Anchorage, and then the one here at San Jose Moffett Field. And they're Air National Guard. So those teams had a state mandate for rescue and recovery and support of any local police or fire that need, or national disaster. But they're on an 18-month rotation to all areas of the world. So they have a state mandate, and then they go fight some bigger fights across the seas for our country. So, but yeah, they had a program, physical therapist resource and a massage therapist resource there 4 days a week at each location. And that's the mandatory program now. So we were able to build the program, but then we lost the contract. So that's the way it goes, My original point, was I wanted to give you guys some background of kind of what my time and space in that world is. But in hockey, I got 20-year-olds to 40-year-olds. Then I got veterans who are broken, who I'm trying to, make sure that they still have their speed and power, they're efficient enough, and they can still go, right? Because they have such a wealth of game experience. And then I have young guys who I'm trying to help create habits with, both in the gym and outside of the gym, and good habits on the ice and practice habits and stuff like that. So in the military, you have the same kind of dynamic. You have the age range is from like 20 to 50. And those 45, 50-year-olds, those guys high in command are broken. They have they're carrying more injuries than our hockey players, obviously, but their mission experience is through the roof. If you can keep those guys in the fight, then better battle plan, and you're going to have a wealth of experience that you can call upon in a critical area of our world, right? So one of the things that will plague that career field is cervical issues, right? So they're jumping out of planes. They're in a helo and with a 10-pound helmet with night vision goggles on, so they're constantly stressing their C-spine, and then they're sitting at a desk and doing their desk work during the day and planning, and then all of a sudden they got to go and train, they got to go and jump, and they got to go, do all this stuff. So it's very much like, wait and then go for this career field. So we really had to navigate a lot of spine issues, especially cervical spine. So that was kind of my like, oh, this is like, if the groin injury is to hockey, then C-spine stuff is the pararescue and jumpers,
Interesting.
Yeah. Like, these guys are so messed up there that you got to use that physical therapy resource and massage therapy resource to get them to correct it first. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. Right.
It's like,
you're talking about years of layering in bad mechanics.
Yeah, totally. Like herniated disc and C7, C6, and you can't just throw the guy into the iron neck or four-way neck and you're gonna have a bad outcome. But that's one of these things. From all the practice jumping and skydiving, the landings, you're seeing a lot of old ankles. You're seeing some knees. You're seeing some shoulders. And things like that from being hyperextended. You guys can't see the video, but when you jump out of the plane, obviously your body's an extension. And if you take a tight shoulder who's been at a desk all day and typing, and all of a sudden you throw, 100+ mile an hour free fall down to the ground, and you're going to force hyperextend. So that shoulder's going to get beat up big time. So you can see in the short time that we've been talking, you can see like all the dynamic that they have to deal with, so.
Yeah. And then, how familiar are you with like interoceptive neural processing? Like someone who's basically been through that traumatic experience over and over too much to where their central nervous system is like doing an overcoupling of, So it's probably hard to just kind of reprogram something like that.
Yeah, and they go through a ton of stress, right? And when you're younger, I think there's different
elasticity.
Yeah,
that you have.
You can deal with it in certain ways, and when guys have gotten older, you can see you really have to kind of be conscious of any PTSD stuff that goes on too, concussive type events that they've had to endure because of training and because of maybe combat with explosions and things like that, but definitely it's something to consider in your program and kind of what you're dealing with. Again, like, are you burning the candle at both ends with an athlete or a military athlete? And, sometimes mobility and stress reduction and better sleeping patterns and eating are going to be your performance enhancement tool. It doesn't necessarily have to be, a clean or a kettlebell swing or a squat loaded at a certain velocity at a certain percentage of your max. So.
Right. Well, I'm curious. This has been a great interview, Mike, and I'm just curious where I feel like you're everywhere.
I do too.
Coaching, teaching, pro sports, military. Are you also writing a book in your spare time? Like, what else you got going on?
If any book I come out with, it's going to be it's not going to be a written text with a bunch of different citations and whatnot. I seems like I do have a lot going on, and it's tough to keep the flaming chainsaws up in the air here. But But it's exciting. The military side kind of just grew organically, and it's fun to. It's really rewarding to help that group get what they need, and with as for the Sharks, it's. We're trying to win a Stanley Cup, and there's ups and downs to the season, and we're kind of on a we didn't have a great season, but we got to regroup. You got to prepare for the next year, and everybody's got to kind of pull the rope in the right direction, and so.
Well, I feel like you're a pioneer of sorts, kind of constructing this all-inclusive programming approach with your athletes that pulls from so many greats in this field, as you're saying, PRI and Mike Boyle and stuff like that. I just wanted to kind of end with a couple questions, more about you. I'm a big quote guy, and I was wondering if you have a favorite quote that comes to mind. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no, I'm I'm glad you asked because I do have one. It's on our walls of our gyms. Actually, we don't rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training.
I love it.
So
I love
I
that
think
quote.
that goes along with the military, world I'm in. But yeah, I think that can speak to a lot of walks of life, not just the physical side too, right? So
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's so hard to keep that consistency piece of exercise with general pop unless they're just so intrinsically motivated. And I feel like that's kind of the uphill battle of the personal training realm.
yeah,
But when you're dealing with athletes or military personnel, it's got to be pretty well understood that you got to be prepared for everything.
yeah, absolutely.
And then, what's your favorite thing to do in your spare time?
I got
Probably sounds like programming.
sleep. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
I got 3 kids. I got a son,
Oh, nice.
13, a daughter, 11, and my youngest is a boy, 8-year-old boy. So I enjoy my time with them. I enjoy playing games and getting outside with them. So
Are they in any sports?
yeah, like hockey, obviously, but I'm always encouraging them to change as they try other things. My daughter wants to try field hockey, and my son played baseball last year, and my youngest one is doing soccer. Probably will do soccer.
Nice.
So yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, it's different things. Our weather out here is amazing, so we can always get outside. It's not like
Right.
we need the rain, but we're not going to stay inside because of the rain or snow. That's for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself biting your tongue trying to program for your kids?
No, because I'm trying to. I guess for my oldest, I'm like, oh, he's 12. Like maybe he should be doing a little bit more, But I'm like, I'm holding back, and
Right. You don't want to push it. Yeah. Right.
But when my daughter, like, what it was really hard was like I tried to run PE class during COVID when everybody was home. Like my wife would do school, and get them on track with the school and the home learning. And I would basically run PE, so and be the principal. But they didn't want to. It was tough to gather them up for PE. I would feel like I was running through the house and pulling them outside. So,
Well, Mike, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate this interview, and
great
stay in
to be part of
touch.
it. Yeah, great to be part of it. And thanks very much, fellas.
If you're ready to make steps towards improving your health or increasing your performance, book a free 30-minute call today by visiting thinkfitnesslife.com.